Hello, and welcome to the Friday Night Author Roundtable. I'm your host, Chris Baker, and during the next half hour, we'll be speaking with several very talented authors about their newly released books, what their inspiration was for creating their unique stories, and why it would be a great book to read and share with your friends and family. One of the most important things about a book is the title, because a title can suck you in before you've even read a word on the page. And that's really, I think, what we have on this next book on the Friday Night Author Roundtable. The title of this book just drew me in, and I really need to find out more about this. The book is called Love is Like a Flatbed Truck by author Tanya L. from Christian Faith Publishing. Tanya, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me, Chris.
Now, tell everybody about this book.
Well, this book is about love and forgiveness. It's about walking through the process of letting go of the past so you can embrace all that God has for you now. It's about two strangers, Chris, Penelope Pride and Judith Presley, who because of a tragic accident were suddenly thrown into each other's lives with only grief and sorrow as their constant companions until they were overshadowed by God's love. That's where it starts. It's a journey that the two women take. They don't know each other. They're complete strangers. But because of a horrific event that happened one day, their lives were melted together. And through that journey, they discovered things about themselves, things that they wanted to know and things that they didn't want to know. But ultimately, they discovered God's love.
What inspired this story? And were you able to draw from any of your own personal experiences in writing this?
Actually, yes, I did draw from personal experience. Like the two characters in the book, I too lost my husband to cancer in 2017. And this book was part of my personal journey through my grief and pain that I went through and am still going through. It helped me to come to grips with things for myself.
Who's the audience that you really hope picks up this book and gets it?
Well, I think this book is for anyone, Chris, who has gone through a really terrible time of grief and sorrow because they've lost someone that was very dear to them. And sometimes when we are in the grips of grief, we really don't think that we're going to survive it. But this book is telling them, as it told me, yes, you will. You will survive it. It's a process that we have to go through. And that's what God does. That's what he did for me, and that's what happened with the characters in this book.
Now, how was it working with Christian Faith Publishing to get this book published and to be able to share it?
It was great. They are very helpful and very insightful, and they led me through the process. I was very pleased that they wanted my input, that they cared about what I thought during the creative process. I don't think I could have gone with a better publisher, and I am very grateful to all of them. Now,
are you working on anything new? Do you have anything planned for the future as far as writing?
Yes, I do. As a matter of fact, I'm working on 3 books right now. Before you called, I was in the midst of going through my editing process with one of those books.
Well, we're excited to see more down the road from you. Now, this book, Love is Like a Flatbed Truck, when people read this, what do you hope is the most important message they get from this story?
I hope that they get that God is with you. He is with you every step of the way. Don't ever think that you're alone, because you're not. You're going to feel that way because that's what pain does. It makes you feel alone. It makes you feel isolated. It makes you feel that nobody else understands what you're going through. But that's not true. God understands, and he's right there. You can't see him, but he's there with you. And trust that and allow your heart to grieve, because in allowing your heart to grieve, you're allowing your heart to heal. And that's what this book will help you to see.
Oh, that's such a great message, because it's a sad fact. We all go through grief and loss and sorrow at some point in our life or another. And this is going to be a great book to show us that there is that hope in the Lord to get through and heal from that grief. The book is called Love is Like a Flatbed Truck by author Tanya L. from Christian Faith Publishing. I encourage everyone, pick up your copy today. Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, online, the brick-and-mortar stores. Those are just a handful of locations. And Tanya, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you very much.
This next book on the Friday Night Author Roundtable, I'm really interested to find out more about, because it takes a look back in history and these types of books at people's lives in a different time always fascinate me. The book is called Searching for Home, a World War II Orphan's True Story of Survival and Grace. The Lifetime Memories of Ina Wolkovich Gardner Nichols by author Alice Frick Hagaman from Christian Faith Publishing. Alice, thank you for being on the show.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Chris.
Now tell everybody a bit about this story.
Well, Searching for Home is a true story about my dear friend Ina Nichols. She was an orphan during World War II, and she's now 86 years old. To tell her story, I wrote in the first person so that the reader will hear Ina's voice. I wanted Ina to tell the story about her very difficult journey from Ukraine into Poland and into Germany during the war. And she also tells about the encounters that she had with various people who made an impact on her life. Ina also details a lot of her feelings as she describes real events that happened to her. In the writing, Ina also tells about her challenges of adjustment that she experienced when she arrived in the United States as an immigrant. I can tell you that her story is a powerful reflection about faith and how she came to know God.
Now, what inspired you to tell Ina's story? Where did that all kind of begin?
Oh, well, first of all, I will say that it did happen in church. We are pew buddies, and we sit together every Sunday in church. And Ina came to me, and just us talking about current events that were happening in the world at the time, and knowing that she was from the Ukraine, I asked her if she had family there, and she said no, that she was an orphan. And then she said, I have such a story to tell to my grandchildren, but they don't know about me. They just think I'm the funny grandmother that has a weird voice. And she was, of course, meaning her accent. And she said, I have such a story to tell, but I can't tell it. I can't write it. And I said, well, Ina, I will write it for you if you'll tell me a few of your stories. And she just looked at me in astonishment and said, oh, you would do that for me? And then, of course, the organ music started up at church, and then I thought, oh, God, what have I done? But it was an experience.
Now, how was it working with Christian Faith Publishing to take Ina's story and put it out there for people to read?
Oh, Christian Faith Publishing was absolutely amazing. I will definitely have to credit my publication specialist, Christy. She was able to just do so much for me. She had an eye for detail. She also knew exactly what needed to happen, when it was going to happen along the publication route. I can't say enough about Christian Faith Publishing.
And if you could say there's an overall message that you hope, or even speaking for Ina, what do you hope people get from this story and reading about Ina's life?
Well, I want them to understand that Ina, in her very young life, she was searching for people to love her and care for her, and she certainly was searching for a safe place. But she was also searching for faith, and she was, as even a child, she was searching for faith even before she ever knew God. And I think that we're all searching for something in life that gives us meaning. And the word home in my book embodies all kinds of different meanings for us all. So I think that thinking about what can be done for others is very important.
Well, that is a wonderful message. And, of course, this is a story I think people are going to find very fascinating. It's always, like I said earlier, it's always fascinating to me to read about somebody's life in a different time. And I think people are going to get that and a whole lot more from this book. The book is called Searching for Home, a World War II Orphan's True Story of Survival and Grace, The Lifetime Memories of Ina Wolkovich Gardner Nichols by author Alice Frick Hagaman from Christian Faith Publishing. You can get your copy today, Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, online, the brick-and-mortar stores. Those are just a handful of the locations. And Alice, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
This next book on the Friday Night Author Roundtable, I'm excited to talk about and find out a little more about. It takes, the teachings of Paul and kind of gives us a better understanding of those. The book is called Death Swallowed Up in Victory, Apostle Paul's Irrefutable Post-Tribulation Resurrection Rapture Judgment by author Frank Dobrowski from Christian Faith Publishing. Frank, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you.
Now tell everybody a little more about this book.
In my book, I cover 1 Corinthians chapter 15, and Paul's argument is split up in two parts there. First part is the big picture, and the second part is the small picture. And the big picture is in verses 20 to 28, and the focus of his argument there is in verses 23 to 26. This part of Paul's argument lays the groundwork. The irrefutable part is not in that. And in the second part, the small picture, is where the irrefutable area of the argument is, and that's found in verse 54. So in the first part, in the big picture, there are two events that lead up to the third. These two events that are laid out are at the heart of his argument. And in the small picture, the irrefutable part is revealed through the resurrection, swallowing up death, where you will find the first two events that were laid out in the big picture end up revealing the irrefutable argument that the resurrection is in the end.
Now, what inspired you to write this book? Where did that all kind of begin?
Well, actually, I'm writing a larger book in eschatology, kind of like an A to Z thing. And I've been involved with that for many years. And the topic of the resurrection has always been a big part of it. And I've had a lot of ideas from the scriptures about the resurrection or rapture taking place post-tribulation. But they were arguable, with whoever would be discussing it. But this one, when it came to me, was irrefutable. And I thought, I pulled that out. I said, I've got to write about this.
Now, how was it working with Christian Faith Publishing to get this book published and be able to share this?
It was fair. Times get difficult, going back and forth to make sure everything is, correct. But eventually we got it all together, and I was happy with the product that came out, the way they got this finished for me.
What is the most important message that you hope readers get when they read this book?
The blessed hope. See, we're going to be carried through the time of tribulation. And see, there's an aspect in chapter 3 that reveals a very important thing, how God is bringing judgment against his enemies in death during that time. And even in the end, when he swallows up death, it's his wrath against death. But that's not happening upon the church. What's happening with the church is a relationship with Christ throughout that time. And there's found here in the resurrection that the hope of Christ coming.
This is the kind of book that fascinates me, and I think people will be fascinated by it and learn a lot from it, and I encourage everyone to pick up their copy. The book is called Death Swallowed Up in Victory, Apostle Paul's Irrefutable Post-Tribulation Resurrection Rapture Judgment by author Frank Dobrowski from Christian Faith Publishing. Get your copy today, Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, online at the brick-and-mortar stores, just a few of the locations. And Frank, thank you for being on the show.
You bet. Thank you.
For anybody who's doing Bible study, if you're beginning, this is going to be great. If you've been doing Bible study for a while, this is going to be a great refresher. The book is called Summary of the Books of the Bible by author Marjorie Moffitt from Christian Faith Publishing. Marjorie, thank you for being on the show.
Well, thank you for having me.
Now tell everybody a little bit about your book.
For years, I've taught classes and observed everything that was happening around me, and I decided I would do a summary like this because very few people know much about the Old Testament except for some major stories and didn't know where some of the books were. So I've enjoyed doing this summary. I taught my ladies in my Tuesday morning Bible study. I taught them these same lessons, but they're the ones that challenged me to write this book rather than put it on a shelf.
Yeah, I was going to say, how was it for you making that decision to take this that you've learned and you've compiled and to finally take that next step to put it into a book form and to publish it? How was that process for you?
It was a challenge for me, but it taught me really how to teach other people, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it, whether I'm teaching a class or just sharing the story of the gospel with other people. It's all about Jesus from Genesis to Revelation, so I just need to challenge people to want to know more about it, and hopefully whenever they read the summary, they'll be challenged to want to get into that book and read all about it.
Now, how was it working with Christian Faith Publishing to get this book published and see it in your hands and to be able to share this?
It's absolutely been fantastic. They helped me from the very beginning. They challenged me, they encouraged me, and they gave me the guidelines that would help me save a lot of time and put it into print. And they were, I just can't speak highly enough of them. They're really great.
Now, is this something you've maybe thought about doing a follow-up to this or something else? Are you working on anything new?
Well, I'm not working on anything new at the moment, but I've been challenged to write another book, and this time I'm going to make it a book of fiction. My first book, It's Never Too Late, tells the story about 5 different people that I've known in my husband's ministry through the years that are true stories. They thought they would never leave the principles of God's Word, but they did. And then they worried that God might not receive them back, but He did. He showed them His love, and they learned from it, and they helped other people become stronger in the Lord as well. And then this book, the summary of the books of the Bible, taught me so much, and I want to do a fiction next time. I'm thinking about it, so we'll just see how the Lord works.
Excellent. Well, we look forward to more from you in the future. Now, this book, Summary of the Books of the Bible, when people read this, what do you hope is the most important thing they gain, the most important message that they gain from reading this book?
Well, let's see. They'll gain the fact that Jesus loves them, that He never changes, and that His Word is the same, whether it was talking to Adam and Eve or whether it's talking to them today. His Word never changes. And he wants people to come to Him and get to know Him. He wants to be able to help them overcome the rough spots in their life. And they can only do that if they will come to Him and ask Him to help them. And He will.
Well, I tell you what, this is a wonderful book and a wonderful message. And I think, as you said, everyone's going to gain a lot from it, but especially people new to the faith. And I encourage everyone to pick up your copy today. The book is called Summary of the Books of the Bible by author Marjorie Moffitt from Christian Faith Publishing. You can get your copy today, Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, online, the brick and mortar stores, just a handful of the locations. And Marjorie, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it a lot.
Our next book on the Friday Night Author Roundtable, I'm really interested to find out more about. Of course, parenting is tough, especially the teenage years can be very difficult, and I think this is going to be a great resource for parents. The book is called Precepts in Christian Parenting, Biblical Guidance for Raising Teenagers by author Dr. Terry E. Long, Sr. From Christian Faith Publishing. Terry, thank you for being on the show.
I'm glad to be on your show. Thank you.
Now, tell everybody a little bit about your book.
The purpose of this book is to offer 7 teachings that teach Christian parenting skills for raising teenagers. This book will teach parents how to reinforce their children's desirable behavior and how to extinguish their children's undesired behavior by using biblical principles. The issues addressed are communication skills, discipline, fighting, drugs, premarital sex, school, and making house rules.
Now, what inspired you to write this book? Where did that all kind of start?
My book was initially my dissertation project at the San Francisco Theological Seminary for the completion of the Doctor of Ministry degree. It took me about 2 years to write my dissertation and another 6 months to modify it into book form to be published. I graduated in 2000, but I didn't start modifying my dissertation into book form until 2018. I had parents at the church where I was serving looking to me for guidance to help them deal with their teenagers, and I had 5 children of my own at home, and 3 of them were teenagers at the time. My focus at work and home was on raising teenagers, so I chose to write my dissertation on the subject of Christian parenting for teenagers. My book comes out of my dissertation project.
Now, who is the target reader for this book? Who's the person that you want to see this book get into the hands of?
The age range of the children for whom this book is designed are children between the ages of 13 and 18.
Now, how was it working with Christian Faith Publishing to get this book published and to be able to share this?
It was great working with Christian Faith Publishing. They were a lot of help, gave me a lot of guidance.
Now, is this something you'd like to do again? Are you working on anything new?
I have some ideas in mind. I hope to publish again, yes.
Oh, excellent. Well, we look forward to more in the future. Now this book, Precepts in Christian Parenting and Biblical Guidance for Raising Teenagers, when people read this, what do you hope is the most important message that comes across from your book?
Well, I hope that they will be able to benefit from the 7 teachings, requests that get good results, God's method of discipline, raising children to be peacemakers, the deception of substance abuse, raising children chaste, and raising smart children, in God's house rules for the home.
Well, I think this is going to be an excellent book. Parents are going to really learn a lot from this. And like I said earlier, raising kids can be tough, and especially in the teenage years, but I think this is going to be an excellent resource for parents. The book is called Precepts in Christian Parenting, Biblical Guidance for Raising Teenagers by author Dr. Terry E. Long, Sr. from Christian Faith Publishing. Get your copy today, Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, online, as well as the brick and mortar stores, just a few of the locations. And Terry, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Our next book on the Friday Night Author Roundtable, I think it'll be an eye-opening book, and I'm really excited to talk a little more about this. The book is called The Lies They Preach, What the Enemy Never Wanted the Church to Know by author Pamela Benton from Christian Faith Publishing. Pamela, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you, Chris.
Now tell everybody a little bit about this book you've written.
This book is for Christians. This has been going on for many of years, that there's going to be a rapture of the church. And as I delve inside of the Bible a little bit more, God has shown me scriptures to prove that this doctrine is not true. And He wants His people to be warned about believing that they're going to disappear, and they won't be ready for what is coming upon the earth, which is tribulation. And it also reveals the pastors who continue to preach this, because God would not allow His people to come into destruction without warning first.
Now, what made you decide to write this book? Where did that all kind of start?
In 2005, I was in a near-fatal car accident, and I was left confined to a wheelchair. And as a single mother, I had to dig into the Bible, because that was the only place I found peace and prayer with God and a real relationship. And every time that I opened up the Bible and read anywhere in the Bible, it's like the scriptures began to jump out at me that was contradicting this doctrine. And as I continued to pursue it, I was really afraid of having to go out and talk to pastors, because I wasn't ordained or anything like that. And the pastors that I talked to, they didn't want to hear it. They didn't want to listen to any of the scriptures. And I was left to go back to God, and He told me to put it in a book, which will allow everyone the opportunity to sit down with a book and with their Bible to go scripture by scripture to prove this for themselves.
I got to imagine, as a target audience, I mean, really any Christian needs to pick up this book. But did you have anyone in particular in mind that you would love to see this book get into hands of?
Actually, as most people feel like the title is offensive to pastors, but I have found since writing the book that most believers really can't accept new information unless it came from their pastors. So there, in some ways, I'm really praying that there will be pastors, leaders, that will open the book, go along with the scriptures, and go back to God to see that this is not something that I made up, so that they can begin to lead the people in their congregation the way that God has intended this thing to go, because I can't do all of this by myself.
Now, how was it working with Christian Faith Publishing to be able to get this book published and to be able to share this message?
I loved the process. This is my first time writing a book, but they have everything laid out so that there's nothing, no questions that you have that they can't answer. And you even have a publication specialist assigned to you where you can call them or email them at any time, and they always get back to you. So I really enjoy the process, and I wouldn't do it any other way.
Now, have you thought about maybe doing a follow-up to this, or do you have anything else you're writing about or would like to write about in the future?
Yes, I'm in the process of writing a second book, but it's not an extension of this book.
Well, excellent. Well, we look forward to more down the road from you. Now, this book, The Lies They Preach, when people read this, what do you hope is the most important message they get or the most important thing they gain from reading your book?
My hope is that everyone reading the book will step back and take a moment to look at their life and what we have going on in our world today and answer the question, are you ready to pay the ultimate price for Jesus Christ's name's sake? And if the answer is no, then we must get ready.
Well, that is a powerful message and an important message that in this day and age we certainly need. And I encourage everyone to pick up their copy. The book is called The Lies They Preach, What the Enemy Never Wanted the Church to Know by author Pamela Benton from Christian Faith Publishing. You can pick up your copy today, Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, online, the brick-and-mortar stores. Those are just a few of the locations. And Pamela, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you so much for joining us for the Friday Night Author Roundtable. We'll be back next week with another great group of talented authors to discuss their books, their process, and their accomplishments. Have a great weekend, everyone.